All right, what we're looking at here is a little bit different for me here on the basement. What we're looking at here is the window regulator from the front left door on a 2012 or 2013 Subaru Forester. This part came out of a car that had a bad front driver's side window. It was stuck up. So this is the regulator that failed. The car had about 100, this is gonna make a mess, isn't it? There's a bunch of grease on the track here. Let's flip this over here. The car has 110, 120,000 miles or so, and it is a model that was made kind of later in 2012, I think September of 2012. Believe it or not, the window regulator is only for 2 years. And that's because it seems that the earlier models of that generation of Forester did not have, or at least here in North America, did not have auto up and down front driver's side window or left side, here in the US. But for the 2012, at least on some of the models, and 2013, before they then refreshed it, 2014 was the first year of a totally new design. The 2012 and 2013, at least of the limited, and I don't know, a couple different trims, had auto up and down on the driver's side window, so you could pull that up and down. And as far as I'm aware, the motor here, there's stuff in here that has to do with the auto up and down in the motor that's changed. So I don't know if you could take the regulator from one of the cars that doesn't have the auto up and down and put it in that later one. Like if the connector here is the same, this actually has 6 pins in here. It's not really clear to me. What is clear is the part number here. So this obviously is the sticker that let me just move the window here so I can see this. This is the sticker from the new window regulator that went into the car. And as far as I'm aware, it's this exact part number, but the original, which is what we're looking at here today, is with a 0. And there was a, what's the right word? There was a new part released, at least according to what I could find online. But calling the local dealer here in Portland, they confirmed with the VIN of the car and the model or whatever that, yeah, this was absolutely the current part. So you can see regulator and motor assembly, front left-hand side, made in Japan. And yes, so this new part went into the car and now the window works perfectly. So what was happening, I wonder what this says here, handle with care or something like that? Or what happened basically is the window was showing no signs of any issues, it was working perfectly. And then one day it was up and that was that. It no longer moved any longer. It was just always up. So it made changing out the motor or swapping out the regulator a little bit more difficult because this black thing here, this is where the glass attaches to. So the window slots into this and is bolted in right here. And the normal removal process, when you read the freaking service manual or even when you look online, people are like, roll the window down to this level. Then, you unbolt the 2 bolts here because there's like an opening in the door and change it. Well, that's not possible when it's jammed. Now, I was thinking, and I don't know why I didn't just do it. I should have just cut through these cables. They're probably steel, so they're going to be hard to cut through. But I'm sure with something like a Dremel or whatever, I would have been able to cut through those. And obviously, this black thing here rides in this track, and there's a cable somewhere. There it is, right there. It's all greasy. I'm going to put gloves on in just a second here. So yeah, cutting this would have obviously allowed it to move. Now, this part of the track where the cable is faces the skin of the outside of the car. So you can't see this when you open the door. These bolts here face, well, if I flip this over and I try to do it without getting my hands all dirty, it sits like this in the door. So you don't see that cable there, but you can see these. So theoretically cutting these should have allowed this to move and then I could have slid this down and got it out. Luckily, when this is in this up position, you can still access these bolts. There's one here and one here. And you just have to use like a wrench and a skinny one, and you kind of have to get your hand up in the door. And yeah, it's covered up by metal and stuff, but you can kind of see this one, and then this one was a bit more tricky, especially because when you loosen this one, it actually runs into this bracket here, so it kind of gets wedged in there. But I managed to get it out. The other thing that's kind of hilarious is you see, let's zoom in a little bit here. There are these little tabs here. I mean, they look like little tabs, but on the original design, they're little hooks, and it actually hooks into the top of the door. which makes installation of the new one really, really easy because you just hook it in here, and then the motor thing also has a couple hooks. You can see one of them right there. So that just hooks into the door and makes it very easy. Problem is, to get this out, you have to move it upwards, like towards the top of the door. Well, that doesn't work when the window is completely in the up position, because the window is resting in this black piece of plastic. It's like actually slotted into it. So you cannot physically move this. So I just used vice grips, and I just metal fatigued those clips right off. And once the clip part is missing, because originally it was a hook that kind of went this way, once that was off, then this should just push in, and then, you know, it was easy to take out. So what I want to do in this video is try to figure out what exactly happened here. My test methodology for figuring out that this was indeed the problem and it wasn't the window switch, there was two ways I did that. First thing I did is when the car was running at night, or actually when it was off, but the headlights were on and it was nighttime, if I activated the driver's side window up or down, I could see the headlights dim. And that told me that power was definitely going to this and it wasn't able to move. There was no sound or anything happening inside of this, other than I could also hear the auto up and down relay, which I think it's in this, or it's in the window control module in the door. I'm not sure which it is, but there's a relay you can hear through the door click. So you push down and a second later you hear it click off. It's the same relay that if this is working, when the window is going down, when it reaches the end stop, obviously the motor stops turning, there's a lot of current draw, and that causes it to click off. And same thing when you go on the auto up, you pull the thing up and it starts raising the window, goes all the way to the top position, and it stops when it hits the seal, and then there's a lot of current draw, and then it will click off like a second later. So if I pushed up or down on the window switch, I could hear the auto stop relay turning off. So that kind of implies that it was sending current to the motor here, and then it was turning off the auto up or down after a second. That was that clicking off. If the physical switch was broken entirely, pushing up or down, well, that wouldn't obviously even try to engage the auto stop mechanism, right? It wouldn't do anything. And you also wouldn't necessarily see anything happening with the motor, current draw in the headlights, that is. So the next thing I did is took apart the door entirely. I just wanted to make sure before we ordered this like $200 part, the OEM Subaru regulator, which is what we got, was about, I think it was $211. Like that was the price, total price at the local dealer here in Portland. And I noticed that Dorman, which is an aftermarket company, makes one of these regulators for the Subaru Forester, this generation, and it was like $150. So it's hardly cheaper. And from what I could tell, it didn't support the auto up and down feature. Do I have two gloves here? Yep, here we go. Here's two gloves. So it was for the other models. And well, we don't want to give up the auto up and down feature, right? That's very useful. From a use case perspective, I mean, you can tell this thing is not dirty. It's not corroded. This is an Oregon car that's been here its entire life. It was made in Japan, but it was brought over here and never exposed to salt. There's no corrosion on the car anywhere. It's still in really good shape. Like I said, 120,000 miles or so since 2012, so it's 12 years old. And pretty much this driver's side window did get a lot of use in that every time, a couple times a day at least, it was going through an access control gate where you had to swipe a card. So, you know, the window would go up and down at least 4 times a day minimum, and maybe more for just incidental usage of the car, you know, driving around and stuff like that. And the car was used every day, or at least 5 days a week for going to work. I know these cable type regulators, when they start to have problems, you can hear like noises and stuff, like it binding up and things in here, and the window jerks and does weird stuff. None of that happened. None of that at all ever happened. This thing always worked perfectly. No noise, like no abnormal noises, no slowing down of the window, nothing. In fact, when the new regulator went in, we put the window up and down, and the owner of the car was like, yeah, it sounds exactly the same as it did when it was working with this one. Like, no actual difference. So can't really say what caused this thing to fail, and that's what I would like to figure out. Now, let's turn this thing around here. One thing that I do know is that before ordering this, like as I said, I didn't want to just order a $212 part or whatever this was and have it not be the problem, have it be like the window switch module. I wanted to check the voltages first. So I used a couple pins on the connector that was on the door, and I checked. And the weird thing is, I think there's some circuitry in here, and it has to do with the auto up and down. And I say that because it seems like there's some signaling going on here. Now we have 6 pins. Oh, and incidentally, we have the service manual for the car, but it's kind of it's one I got off eBay, and it's not the original service manual, like for the specific year. And oddly enough, the wiring diagram in the service manual, which is for the 2013 Forester, it does not show the auto up and down. So this feature that this particular car has is something that the service manual doesn't show. And worse than that, the motor, the diagram of the window regulator in the, in the service manual, it just shows us having 2 pins. So obviously the way that would normally work is it would just reverse the polarity of a normal DC motor to roll the window up and down. And that has more to do with what's happening in the little button module, like you push down and it sends, the voltage one way to the motor, and you pull up and it flips it around and sends it the other way. And you could see that whole, in the wiring diagram, it had the whole interconnection, like how the switches work. Clearly that's not the case here. So what I found when I was testing, with the actual car is 2 of these pins, and I don't remember which 2 it was, but like these 2, for instance, were 12 volts. And no matter which way you put the window switch, up or down, you'd always get 12 volts, same polarity. But then there was another set of pins that had 5 volts on them, I think all the time. The 12 volts would only happen when you pulled the window up or down. It didn't actually like change polarity or anything. And then the 5 volts I think was always there. And then I can't remember what I saw on the other pins. It wasn't 12 volts. So I have a feeling there's some circuitry in here that has to do with, like, there's probably like a motor driver in here or something. And the 12 volts gets shunted to this, and another signal to tell it whether it needs to go up or down. And then potentially there's like a current sensor in here for the motor, and then that's what disables the auto up or down, I think. I've never really looked into how the up or down functionality works on a car that has auto up down, but that's kind of what I'm assuming happens. As far as the actual regulator, and I mentioned it was like a different part number, there's nothing different about these. Like I closely examined this one. This is the one that came out of the car that was installed by the factory when it was new versus the one we picked up and bought literally today actually came from the dealer. So November 2024, there was no visible difference in any way. Everything looked the same, like everything. I think it even had this sticker here. I'll stick a photo here so you can look at it, but I looked at both sides. I looked very carefully to see if there's like any improvements in the, in anything, and no. And obviously, where is it? Here's the cable. It's not broken, so that's not the problem. I mean, obviously if it were broken, then this would be able to move, but it's not. Obviously the one we got from the dealer, the very first thing I did is unbag it, plug it into the harness of the car, outside, uninstalled, make sure it goes up and down, just to validate 100% that it's not the buttons or wire or that stuff. And no, it worked immediately. And it was down here in like this position, which made reinstallation extremely easy because there's an access hole in the door. So you just have to make sure the glass doesn't fall. So we had tape, and then we lowered the glass down, bolted it all up, put the bolts in. There were 4 on the track. The motor has 3. I mean, the whole thing is so easy. And because this has hooks, there's a hook here and here. The reinstallation was so simple. If anything, like getting the door panel apart and stuff was the hardest thing. And yeah, so there was a pretty easy job. Got to give props to Subaru for that at least. But it'd be better if this thing just hadn't broken. So I think what we need to do is I should probably get some paper towels and try to clean up this mess here, because this is going to put grease all over my bench. Not that I can't just clean that up with Windex at another time or something. But yeah, it's still greasy and everything. It's not like this thing had dried up. Although, yeah, I mean, it's still very slippery. It's crusty grease. it's not great. But on the other hand, I'd say, I don't know. I mean, trying to look for a failure mode. I'm looking for my Windex, which completely seems to be missing. Here it is. I don't think this is ever going to go back into the car. I mean, I suppose if I can find the fault and it's something that's fixable, maybe it's worth just throwing this in a box. And if the one we just got from the dealer ever breaks, then we could throw this one in. I don't know. But so let's zoom in on this. Couple interesting things. What is this? I saw this and it's on the new one as well. And I didn't try to move it on the new one, but it's like a lever or something. I don't know. It doesn't really do anything. I was wondering is this some kind of like a release mechanism? Something like that. But Mitsuba obviously is the manufacturer of this. And we don't see any signs of like water ingress or anything. Obviously this is exposed to the elements because water can come down the window seal. There's a little bit of corrosion on here, but it's not bad. So I guess the first thing to do, since I know I can't just apply power because it was stuck, maybe I should just remove the motor. Maybe that's the first thing to do. I don't really see any other fasteners on here. Like we could see the little nuts there where the motor is attached. This metal thing here is obviously crimped on. You can see right there where it's crimped. So that's not going to be easy to get off. And then this, see if I can get that off, I suppose. Is that crimped on as well? That is also crimped on. Okay, well, let's just, I don't know, here we go. I don't know what's going to happen. Let's just try to force this apart. Okay, so there's that. I mean, nothing looks bad, right? This looks fine. Looks like the cable end is right there. Yeah, okay. Nothing's wrong there. I suppose it'd be possible for me to get this back on. I just sort of bent those tabs pulling it off. All I have to do is just sort of hold that on, hammer it back on again. I'm just going to put that there so when I flip this over, oh, wait, this is all coming apart now. Oh no. Oh yeah, look at that. Oh, okay, so this is like a wire guide. So let's look what we see under here. Oh, there it is. There's the spool. And look, it's not messed up at all. Yeah, I mean, I know what happens is the cables get frayed and then they start to bind, but those look perfect. I don't see any issues with that at all. Okay, well, let's try to get this back into position here, if I can. Sorry, get this in view. I mean, this is a junk part, so it's not like I need to get this back together again, but I thought it'd be interesting. Okay, I don't know. Well, that doesn't seem to go back on. I could probably fight with it, but I'm just going to not. Okay, let's get this cover off on this side here. I'm just gonna have to wash everything when I'm done here. I can tell a bunch of grease is gonna come out of this. I can hear it just sort of squishing around in there. Oh, there we go. Okay. Right, so it's got like a butyl rubber type seal. Worm drive right here turns this, which is then probably connected to the other side, which then turns this whole cable spool assembly. And nothing here looks bad. I mean, this is clearly not frozen. And I can tell you, trying to operate the motor did not move this even that much. Like, see how this is moving a little bit here? No. And because it's a worm drive, that means you can't lower or raise the window without turning the motor. There's just no way that's gonna happen. So the fact that this is still able to move a little bit tells me that I think the motor has seized up. I really think that that's the problem. So that means, I mean, I'm just trying to think if like it's worth even trying to ever use this thing again. I don't know. All right, let's try to get these screws off here for the motor. And I'm assuming it's just all gonna like spring apart and make a huge mess, but that's fine. We're here to kind of investigate what exactly is going wrong with this thing. And I wanna know if what circuitry, if any, is in here. There has to be. Why else would it have 5 volts going into it if it didn't have some kind of sense circuitry? Unless there's like just a current shunt in here or something like that. Okay. Let's see, there we go. Here comes the motor. Oh, oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that's really clean. There's a seal right here. Okay, I don't even get it. This turns completely freely. There's no issues whatsoever. There's a bearing up at the top there. It's turning this, and it's kind of moving this whole thing because I took this all apart. So, okay, so theoretically, I should be able to unscrew this, pull this out. Oh, I guess it is brushed. There's the brushes there. Let's get closer there. Is that the problem right there? That the brushes went bad? Yeah. That might have been it right there. Yeah, I bet if I just Scotch-Brite that. Oh yeah, look at this. There they are. So that's been arcing and whatever the whole time. Okay, all right, well. So I'm trying to see how the electrical connections get up to the motor. Obviously right here, right? So there's the two poles and must go down into the body here. I kind of have a feeling if I just sand that down, I don't have a way to replace those brushes there, but maybe a little Scotch-Brite on the rotor, stator? I can't remember what that's all called. We could make it work. Oh, look what's happened here though. So that's not good. Okay, well, that's how you take that out. Oh, sorry, you're not able to see what I'm looking at here. So that came out. And this is like, it's like clockwork. There's a lot of grease on here. Let's see if I can try to get this back together again. Okay, this is interesting. This is actually serviceable, I mean, to some extent. Okay, I see there's a spring. There's a spring in there. You see that spring right there? This goes in there. I gotta like try to reconstruct this. If I want to try to run the motor, or I guess I can't run the motor though. I'm just trying to think. I mean, without the cover installed, that's the top bearing. I don't know. Okay, let's see here. So this freely spins now because with the motor removed, the worm drive is now free. So that's now free, right? So this can spin. So that's another way to actually get the whole thing to move, is just take the cover off the motor if you can access it. I can't remember if I could. It's sort of behind the metal, but I think if you could take the bolts out and move the motor into an accessible location, take this top cover off, remove this assembly here by unscrewing it, and then the whole thing will freely move up and down. I'm going to try to reconstruct this though and get this back into position here.
Much later.
Okay, I just absolutely made it worse. As you can see here, this is a plastic gear here that is spline onto that. And the bottom is where the cable for the, I don't know, which one is it here that we're dealing with? The gray cable loops around. The problem with getting this back together is that it's all under spring tension. And there's obviously a special tool to hold this in place and hold this and hold everything together in place. And I do not have that tool, clearly. So I have to, you know, kind of get this, you got to like hold that in there properly. And the way it would work, if we could do it, is this would go down into here. This actually sits in this like a track here. Let's see here. How does this go back? I had it down there a second ago. Well, I think this cable here is wedged underneath it right now. There it is right there. That's why it's not working. So you have to pull this up here like that. And I mean, look how much of a mess my bench is right now. This is so difficult to put back together. Anyways, it's all under spring tension because to get this cable onto here, it needs to wrap an entire time around it and then go into there. And the issue is to get that done. You know, I mean, maybe I could do it off of this. Okay, let's try one more time, lifting this spool up here off the spline. I mean, I don't know. I don't think this is going to be doable. Yeah, because the cable's loose right now. Got to keep everything super tight. So put that there for now, and let's see if we can get this cable into here. This has to go on the top side of it. Oh, it's already unwinding. Damn, this is really tough. This is really tough. Okay, well, so yeah, the issue is, as you can see, this is sitting here on the bench, but there are springs inside of this white thing here, and you have to, this all has to be under extreme tension for me to like wrap this around all the way. It would be possible to do it with a bunch of clamps and stuff. I am not gonna bother. I'm gonna say that's it for this regulator. And I'm going to try to clean up my bench a little bit, and let's see if we can get the motor working again, because clearly what failed here is not the cable. Nothing about this cable system, as annoying as it is here, failed. Although I notice here, this is actually cracked here. Look at this. See that? So because that's cracked, that means water could start to get into here, and then this could all start to fail. I mean, there's still a lot of grease on all of this, so I don't necessarily think that's gonna happen, but it's certainly possible. So let's get this all out of here. Yeah, these cables are extremely greasy. I should have put down some newspaper or something like that first. So things that can break here. Obviously, this could break, and then that'll render your window inoperative, but there are no signs of any kind of breakage here. Don't really see any wear or anything on there either. Obviously, this thing could break, and that came out of my trash can. That's not related. There's a lot of grease on here, but it looks like it's in good shape as well. Yeah, I don't really see any issues here. Looks fine. So that could break, and that would render your whole window inoperative as well. This is metal right here, and that turns without issue. The whole motor housing, on the other hand, well, obviously we could have some issues here. You can see that spins. No issues. So I'm going to move this off the bench here and try to clean up a little bit. And we're going to focus our attention on this thing here. Got to clean up this disaster of a mess here, including my tools. Because I do not like grease. I work on computers here. I don't work on this kind of stuff, and I'm not used to the mess. Changing out the actual part on the car was fine. There was no grease involved with that other than a little bit that would get on your hands from touching the track if you accidentally touch the track. So yeah, wearing gloves, no problem there. But obviously taking apart the window mechanism itself, different story. But I am pretty sure that our entire issue is with this right here. There are the magnets inside of there. Okay. And there's the brushes. Zoom in on that so you can see what I see. So there's one of the brushes right there. See that curved part? There's the other one. You can see a lot of dust and stuff, right? And that comes from the brushes themselves. So the fact this is a brushed motor, I mean, it's just how it's done back in the day, right? It's just how it's done. I mean, you can do brushless now with motor controllers and stuff like that, but that's just not how it's done on cars, right? Old school tech. Problem is, if this were rebuildable, I mean, okay, here's the crazy thing. There was nothing wrong with this entire mechanism except for the motor, obviously. So theoretically, this is very serviceable. There were 3 screws. I was able to get this out. If you could just buy this and a new set of brushes, which are easily replaceable, well, let's see how easy. Okay, not that easy. You have to solder them on. So they're soldered on. So you could still take them off, desolder them, put new ones on, clean this up, and you literally have a brand new thing. I just noticed that the bench is absolutely gross still. Okay, cleaning 2.0, here we go. All right, back to this. I'm gonna put on a paper towel to try to keep the crud off the bench. Okay, So I'm going to say the brushes, they look fine. What I can do is get myself a cotton swab, which I think I have some down here. I'm not really prepared. And let's use a little IPA on the bench here and carefully see what we see here on the brush. I mean, that's really cruddy. And that kind of stuff on these types of motors, yeah, will absolutely cause it not to work. Probably a little bit of arcing was going on, something, I don't know. I mean, look at all this. It's dirty. It's very dirty. The bigger problem, obviously, I don't want to get my fingers all greasy again, is this. That out. It needs to be shiny. It needs to be like this part. That's not good. You can see the pitting there. That's from the arcing as the motor spins. So I have totally revived motors in the past using this brown Scotch-Brite, and I just cut myself a little strip of it. And ultimately, what you might want to do, I mean, if you're going to do this really well, is you'd mount this inside a chuck of like a drill press so that it would just spin this thing. And then we would just wrap this around like so. I'm just going to try it by hand first. See how this works. I mean, look at the difference. Look at that difference. That was like 2 seconds of Scotch-Brite. So I am confident that that's all it would have taken to make this thing work again and fix this motor. And it would have been a free fix. Just with the work of taking it all apart, obviously. And before I damaged it. But hey, the car is already back in operation again. So it's not like I need this thing to work now. So what we're going to do now is use a little bit of contact cleaner on there. Right here. There we go. I'm just kind of cleaning off what we put on there. You can see there's still evidence of pitting there, but that looks remarkably better. Now, other things you can do is check to make sure none of these copper wires are disconnected, but they're hooked on there quite well, so I don't think there's any issues there. Obviously, if we have burns in the windings and stuff like that, that could be issues, but there's no way. When that, looking that bad, that was our problem right there. So I think the issue is now, obviously I can slide this back in to here. So you just carefully get this back in. Oh, that's, yep, that's the right way. The bushing at the bottom. There we go, it's in there. Oh, no, there we go. Now it's in. You can see this turning. Okay. Well, one thing we can do is I can connect up to these 2 pins right here. That's where the power is supplied to the motor. And I can give some DC power to this, voltage to it. I'll do low voltage because obviously we're missing the top bearing. But there's no load on this because obviously the window stuff is all disconnected there. So let's get the bench supply connected up here. Can do that. There we go. Okay. Now I should be able to, I'm going to give this, well, I'm going to put it at 1 amp, but I'm going to start at 2 volts. Just see what happens. Nothing. Oh, you know what? Duh. Of course nothing's happening. A motor's not going to work. A motor's not going to work unless you have the magnets there. And they're in the cap here. So I need to figure out how to access the pins that, you know what I'm going to do? Because this thing just seems like it's sealed here. I think I'm going to solder a couple wires onto this, and I'm just going to run them out of this cabinet here. I just want to demonstrate that the motor can work. It can work again. You just need to clean the damn stator. I think that's what it's called. Boy, my terminology sucks. I don't really know what I'm talking about here, but I know enough. what I intend to do here is attach this to directly to where like the motor's fed power. And then I'm just going to put the cap on and run this outside of, out of the cap, you know, just like through the edge or whatever. Because normally there's a rubber seal on there. So I'm just going to do that. Let's see here, just get these wires tinned. I mean, this is obviously not the way you want to do this, but you know what? It's gonna be fine. It's just, I want to demonstrate that this motor can work. That's what I'm trying to show here. Ooh. So yes, I know it's looped together right now. That's fine. I just did that so I could strip 2 less wires. Okay, so let's put this on. And I'm gonna leave the seal off. There's this rubber seal that goes on there normally. I'll just leave that off. I don't need to put the screws on even, but you see there's a little bit of a gap there, and that's where these wires are coming through. So yeah, what happens is it energizes the coils through the brushes, right? That sends the voltage into the the coils. It creates an electromagnet. And then there are 2 fixed magnets on the cover here. And then the electromagnetic field is repelled or attracted by these permanent fixed magnets on here. And then that means that it will turn because the way the coils are arranged are slanted. I don't know. Wikipedia will have better explanation than what I have here. Okay, so we'll get this connected up like that. Let's start again and we'll put it at 4 volts. There it goes. And we're at 4 volts, well, 2 volts at 1 amp. So let's up the amperage here. There it goes. So what are we pulling right now? 1.1 amps at 4 volts. Let's try, that would move the window very slowly. I'm gonna up it to 12 volts, or how about 13 volts? And let's lower the current down. I'm sure these wires are being overheated right now. Uh-oh. Okay, something's going on as I was moving this. I think, oh, you know what? Maybe those bushings in there are not well lubricated. Let's take a look at that. This rides, I'm gonna put a bit of lubricant on there. It's all a bit dry. So it was running obviously, but it was like, it wasn't exactly happy. So I have some lubricant here. There we go. I'll use some of this lithium grease here. So some there, and I guess I'll put some down there. I don't know. And my assumption is this is a bushing of some kind here. So how about a little on there? I don't know. I mean, this is experimentation, right? I want to make sure I don't get that grease on the brushes. This is turning relatively freely, so that's not an issue. And hopefully this grease up there helps. This is going to be hard as usual. There we go. Get those wires down there. Okay, there we go. Try number 2. Here we go. Yeah, that's not working very well, that's for sure. I don't really know how many amps this motor draws though. So, and then these wires aren't helping, are they? Because they're so thin. At 13 volts, those wires getting hot? They're okay, they're okay. Do we got torque? Oh yeah, lots of torque. Now, obviously we just flip these around and we'll go the other direction. Okay, here we go. Yeah, 13 volts, about 2.1 amps. Without the seal in there, this is like a spacer. Let's put the seal in place. I'm gonna leave the wires hanging out. Unfortunately, the car's all back together now, and there's no way I feel like, you know, trying to plug this into the car again. I'm sure it would work, right? There's no reason why it wouldn't. So let's put this on. Oh, yeah, look at the brush. Sorry, look at the stator again. It's looking a little crustomatic already. So let's see right there, I pulled it up a little bit. It's already starting to get some wear. I wonder if I should have used more of that contact cleaner on it. Let's spray some contact cleaner. It could be the brushes are just very worn and they ultimately need to be changed. All right, I'm gonna put the screws back in. I just wanna see how well it runs with the screws in there, because that of course situates the bearing and everything. And obviously, if it's not perfectly centered in there because I didn't have the cap attached, then it might have an issue, things like that. Might not run properly. Right, it might not run as smooth as it should. Oh, you know what I can do now that we have the brushes outside of the motor? I can see if there's continuity from these to any of the pins. Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, let's see what happens now. Does this work still? Okay, here we go. Ready? No. It did not work. Now, I'm wondering if this is because of these wires here. And the cap is not on straight. So it was running, and now it's not. And why? Why is the question? Well, my assumption is that the position of this cap is very important, and it's cocked a little bit because the wires are going through there. So let's see if there is continuity between those wires. Of course, all this crap is attached to my multimeter here. Let's see if there's continuity between these and the pins that are on here. Okay, first of all, see, do we have a short to this? No. Because I was wondering if it had like crimped the wires or something when I tightened it down. Oh, okay, well, we have 0.7, and the other one here, 0.7, 0.7. So my assumption is what we're looking at here is that does go directly to the motor. So I didn't need these wires after all. I swear I never saw it change polarity. Do we have any continuity? That was these two pins, the top, the ones closest to the top here. These here, no. Okay, I don't know. I must have just measured it wrong. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pop the cap off. We're gonna remove those wires. I'm gonna put this back together, and then we're gonna try to drive the motor with the cap on correctly without the wires. And then we'll see if it turns and doesn't draw so much current. Come on. Come out, little screws. Okay, there we go. Yeah, it's looking pretty ratty already, just from that short time we ran it. Well, first of all, we'll get the seal off of here again. Let's clip these off, or we'll just metal fatigue. Everything comes off super easy. Let's grab another one of these. I'm gonna put some contact cleaner on it. Okay, yeah, this is QD stuff here. It's flammable. And we'll try to clean the brushes here. Get that gunk off of them. Okay. Ugh. Cruddy. And where's that Scotch-Brite? We will Scotch-Brite this again. We're gonna get this nice and shiny. Doesn't take much. Cleans right up. I'll just do a little contact cleaner action on here. Now, I bet you there's folks who work on motors a hell of a lot more than I do. And they can probably tell me a much better way to recondition this. Or they might tell us that there are ways to get the, new brushes and stuff. Okay, I can see this is a bushing, it goes there. All right, here we go. Back through here again. Okay, it's definitely working. Let's turning this. Seal down. Cover on. There we go. Screws on. Wish it were that easy, but I gotta put them in manually here. Can you see what I'm doing? Yes, you can. I was just checking. I think moral of the story is here is that the fault here was entirely the brushes and the stator getting all crusty. And if I had just taken the motor apart when it was still in the car, I bet you with some Scotch-Brite and contact cleaner and maybe some grease all over this stuff, we could have made this thing work again. So I'm just trying to get these down, torque them evenly. It could be that the brushes are just cactus. They're dead. And without new brushes, no amount of cleaning would get this thing working again. Or it would just fail prematurely again. Okay, hands are gross again. Let us check what we are getting on the multimeter here for resistance. There we go. Top 2 pins, closest to the case. Okay, there it is. Yeah, 0.7 ohms. 0.4, I don't know, 6. It's obviously going to be varied depending on the position of the stator. Okay, I have thicker clip leads here from the bench supply. This will have no trouble with more current. There we go. All right, who's ready for motor action? I'm going to lower the voltage down to 6. Hell yeah. It's running at 1.5 amps right now at 6 volts. Let's go up. 13 volts, look at that. Doesn't sound perfect, but it's working great. No weird speed. It's running at 1.7 amps right now. 1.8, 1.9, and what's going up? Is that because it's carbonizing on the stator again? Yeah, it's at 1.9. Okay, it's back to 1.8 again. Yeah. Okay, let's flip the polarity around. Freaking motor. Bad brushes. Just not surprised. Not surprised at all. Here we go. Here we go. Same thing, 1.8, 1.7 backwards. 13 volts is what I'm running at right now. Obviously, if we slow down, lower the voltage, lowers. We're at 4 volts right now. It's still working. 3 volts, still running. Wow. Let's see if it can start at 3 volts. It starts at 3 volts even. It's running at 1 amp, 3 volts. Oh man. I mean, I feel dumb to not have at least investigated the whole situation. Could have saved 200 bucks even. I bet you this would have made this motor work again, and I'm pretty sure, let's see the other direction by the way. There it goes. I am pretty sure that this is accessible in the car. So how is this in the car? So it's in the car, like if this is the top of the door where you put your, elbow, and the bottom of the door is over here. The motor sat in kind of a position like this because of these hooks here. There's one there and there, hooked in. And then this connector was visible, through an opening in the door. So there was an opening around here. So I bet you, if you took these bolts out, you could have lifted this and moved it just like that and tilted it enough to get these screws out and get this cover off. And you probably would have found exactly what I did, is all that carbon tracking and pitting. So brown Scotch-Brite, and then a little contact cleaner, and maybe a little bit of grease, and maybe there's something better than that, on the bearing surfaces. Get this back in, evenly torqued, and let's ramp this back up to 13 volts. There it is, 13 volts, 1.7 amps. Could have freaking recovered the window and saved 200 bucks. Now, I think people watching this, if anyone does watch it, are gonna know more about like these types of brush motors. And did using this, would that actually work long term, or would those brushes really need to be changed to prevent this from happening like in short order? Like how long would it run before this broke again because of the carbon tracking? You know, that's the question I don't know, and I'd be curious to hear about that. So comment down below if you happen to know about that stuff. And if you have this problem, do not take apart the whole rest of the mechanism, because if I had just gone straight for this and not touched this stuff, then this freaking thing would have worked. And when it comes to the track, you know, we saw that track I had there. I could have just, you know, put a bunch of grease all over the cable and used like injected some grease like under the covers, or, you know, pried one of the covers off and tried to put a bunch of grease in there. Not sure how accessible the grease is in there, but anyways, you know, some fresh grease might have helped prolong the life of this thing and keep those plastic parts from breaking, but none of them looked like they were ready to break. So literally, we were let down by a freaking DC brushed motor, and that's all there is to say. So there we go. Got a window regulator. I mean, you know, here's the thing I'll have to add, by the way. If you know that there's cable problems, binding, you can tell when you roll it up and down, it's like, you can hear the cable binding and those noises. What can happen is the cable can get frayed. Well, obviously, the motor's not the problem at that point. But I bet you I could have got one of these from a junkyard. No, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I bet you I could have bought one of these from a back window from a junkyard. And it's probably the same exact motor assembly. Like, this part might be different, but I don't know. I bet you this is very similar. It's not compatible. Like, you can't just put it in the door because of the whole, like, the round part and everything. But I probably could have stolen the brushes and the stator and maybe the cap. And, you know, I don't know. You can mix and match. You know, go to a wrecker's, buy one of these things. Even if it's broken, like if the cables are broken, the motor might still be good. So you can mix and match, because this thing is actually serviceable. You just have to desolder the connections on the brushes there that go down into the body here, right, that make their way to the connector. But if you've got one of these, you could do the testing by hooking up these top two there. And I mean, I'm trying to think about this. So we know that this wouldn't spin, right? So this was stuck because we saw the current draw. So there was definitely current getting through to the windings. But I'm thinking, I guess the question is like, why wasn't it spinning? I don't know. I almost feel like, you know, maybe there was a short, like it was stuck in between two windings and it was somehow shorting out. I don't know. I'm not sure. Again, this is all like way beyond my familiarity, but I really want just to autopsy this and figure out what happened exactly. And as for the other pins on here, I don't know. I'm assuming that's what, there's a current shunts in here, and that's how I can tell that it's reached the end of travel. And maybe that there's these two pins because one is for one direction, one's for the other. I don't really know. But here we go. 13 volts. Spins right up. Off. On. Yep. And let's go back down to 3 volts. There is 3 volts. Look at that. Runs at 3 volts. How much torque do we have? A ton. I can't stop that. That's a worm gear drive for you. Nice and torquey. Even at 3 volts, nice and torquey. The motor gets warm, by the way, just from running. But anyways, okay, well, I don't know. I think that's all there is really to say about this. I'm going to keep this part, just because now that I know this about the car, if one of the other windows dies and it doesn't seem like a cable binding problem and it's a motor problem, well, I could maybe take parts off this and put on one of the other doors. I don't know. Or then I can compare the other doors to this. I don't know, something like that. So there we go. Trying to fix, well, autopsying a dead window regulator from a Subaru Forester and trying to fix it, and I got it working again. Of course, I destroyed the whole cable assembly. Well, I didn't destroy it, but I don't have the right tools to get it back together, and there's really no point. So what I'm gonna do is, like, this is gonna go into a box for the car, and in the future, now I know. If a window stops working, and I don't think it's cables, I'm gonna go straight to the motor. And I'm going to check for the damn brushes and the carbon buildup in there, and maybe get it working again. And I am confident I could have got this working on the car without even taking it apart. And I've just never seen any videos of anyone doing this kind of thing. So I wanted to make this, and that's what you're watching now. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching. Yeah, Adrian's Digital Basement Extras. There's also a main channel and a second channel that's computer stuff, of course, and things like that. But you know what? Fixing a computer, fixing a window, it's not that different, is it? All right, that's it. Stay healthy, stay safe. See you later. Bye.